more confidence you'll have at 9 o'clock on an exam morning saying, right, I've done as much as I possibly can. I'm ready for this. Let's do this.
Do you have any recommended study plans? I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of students come through.
Oh, we have. And look, everyone's different. It's a good question, Alex. I mean, I'm quite a visual studier, so I was all about mind maps, and I drew a whole bunch of mind maps through my studies. But beyond that, just to give you my approach is I read, so I was in your position, 2014 is when I got my PMP, 2011 was when I got my CAPM, and I remember reading Pinbot Guide for my CAPM, and I read Rita's book for my PMP, and I was going through page by page, read Rita's book from start to finish, and every page that I read, I had a notebook, and I either drew a mind map or basically summarized the key points on that page in language that I was familiar with. So you could probably summarize our page of Rita's book in probably about 3 or 4 sentences. That's what I was doing. So quite high level, right? This is the guts of what this is. Might draw a diagram, whatever it might be. Now, the process of me reading something, thinking about it, and transcribing it into my own words was enough for me to study. I didn't once actually review any of my notes. Okay, the notes weren't there for me to review. The notes were there as part of a process for me to absorb the material. If that works for you, great, use that. You've got a stack of notes you can review, a week prior to the exam, but just the effort of reading something, thinking about it, and transferring it into a pencil on paper or pen on paper was my approach. All right. Let's jump into the application process. Now I'm going to share my screen in a second, but I'm going to start. By the way, this has been recorded, so if you want to watch this again, Bronwyn will share this in due course. Now, if you're anyone in the room, just put your hand up if you are going for the CAPM exam. Okay, I can't see any hands, and there's a couple of videos off. Also, Joanna?
We were told this was only for PMP.
Okay, let's just jump straight to PMP then. Okay, so let me share my screen. PMI have just changed the exam application process that made it a bit easier for you guys, which is good news. And I'll share my screen and take you through the updated template that's now on our website. So it may look different depending on when you downloaded our version of the template. Now, the first thing I'll say is the reason why we have this template, well, where this template came from is we went through the PMP application process a while ago and scraped it and basically created a whole bunch of fields. Can you see my Word document up on screen at the moment? Yep. There's a bit of stuff at the start around just FYI. I have a bit of a skim through this. Now, I guess it's all about audits, and to make sure whatever information you put forward, you need to have the ability to back this up. It works very similar to the tax system in New Zealand. By default, people assume you're telling the truth, but they could at any point in time pick up your application and say, we're going to audit this, please show us evidence behind this. So we don't want to lie to PMI, we don't want to stretch the truth, we need to represent it in, I guess, the most factual format possible, where you've got copies of certificates and signatures from your senior stakeholder or your manager or your sponsor throughout the course of your project, and we'll give you a certificate around the PM education hours as well. So there's 3 sections of the application. One is around your general education, okay, so your schooling, your highest level of schooling, and that will dictate how much experience you need to then submit. So if you have a degree, which is a bachelor's degree, so a 3 or a 4 year degree or above, then you're required to submit 4,500 hours, or it's about 3 years, so it's about 36 months of project management experience. If you do not have a degree, so you passed high school, you might have a certificate, you might have a diploma, then you require 5 years of experience. Okay, so about 60 months of project management experience. So I'll get to the experience in a second, but basically this first, I guess, page in your application, your schooling will dictate how much effort you need to put into the second part. So look, essentially put your highest qualification here. There is a drop-down list. These are some of the options there. There might be others in the form now, but basically just put whatever is your highest. Some people don't have certificates from high school, so we've never actually been asked, not through my experience in being involved in this training for the last 8 years, for someone to provide something from their high school. But hey, look, if you do have something, then I'd use that. So if you went to say you left high school in 5th form, but then got a level 4 certificate in some sort of a plumbing apprenticeship or whatever it might be, then I'll be using that. If you've got a diploma certificate from a tertiary institution, then I'll use that. So just put, some details here around the year it was awarded, what school or university gave it to you. These are all sort of open fields. You'll have to put the address. Now, sometimes people, these organizations have changed names. So I got my bachelor's degree and my graduate diploma in project management from CPIT. Now it's rebranded as ARA. So I'll be putting CPIT in that because CPIT is what's on my certificate. Okay, so make sure you put the name of what's on your certificate. Now, if there's opportunity to say this is now being rebranded as ARA, then, great, put that as well.
Did they keep anything on file from previous applications? I mean, I know I sat a different exam a few years ago. Do you think they keep anything on file?
Do they keep anything on file?
Yeah, PMI.
Yes, they do. So your PMI profile, if you've so Alex, you've got some other PMI certifications. They will have a history of that. So if you've already got,
but I did sit the exam for the PMI SP about 4 years ago. I'm just wondering whether they have all the backing up documentation from my application.
Correct. Yes, they normally do. So I've got CAP and PMP and PMI ACP. After I set my PMP and went and got my PMI ACP, all my education, my work experience was there. And because they knew I had PMP, there was a shortcut I went down with the application for the Agile certification. So that history should be there. I mean, things have changed over the years, and perhaps you may have applied and just before they modernized the website. I don't know, but look, this is back in 2013 and 14 for me. They had the history.
Yep.
Any questions around just your general education? I mean, it should be pretty straightforward, but any questions, let me know now.
Just a question on education here. Because I'm actually on the page here, and it says academic education secondary degree, or I have a bachelor's degree.
So say that again, Mohammed. So what was the option? You're a little bit quiet there.
In the education, it highlighted that I have a secondary degree under the academic education, while I have a bachelor's degree.
Yep. So secondary degree is essentially the American term for passing high school.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but I have listed my academic education as bachelor's degree.
Yes. So sorry. So is there a drop down where there's a limited number of options you can choose from?
Yeah, but I was expecting under academic education to say undergraduate, university undergraduate or something, or bachelor's degree, not to say secondary degree.
So what options do you have in that? Is there a drop down field, Mohammed?
There is, yeah.
Okay, so what are the options in the drop down field?
Actually,
do you have the ability to share your screen, or are you on two different devices?
No, you can you see my screen now?
Okay, yes. It's a little bit, I mean, you're quite small, but okay.
And it's here, bachelor degree.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused about what's going on. So you've submitted a bachelor's degree, and on the right hand side, it's already sort of ticked the box against saying you got a secondary degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Not sure.
Can you go and can you edit your bachelor's degree submission?
Yeah, I did that.
Click on that one there. Let's just have a look what the fields are in there. So the reason why I can't do this myself is because I've already got the PMP application, so I can't actually get into, and all of our trainers have the same thing, so we actually can't get into the screen that Mohammed's saying here.
So these are the options I have.
Can you read them out to me? I can't see those, mate.
So high school, associate degree, bachelor degree, master's.
Yep.
And doctorate. That's the last one.
So you've selected a bachelor's degree. Yep.
Yeah. Filled everything, and date, field of study, save.
Yep. And then it's automatically coding that as a tick against having a secondary degree.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so while I go on to the next topic, it'd be good if you can go to the next page and confirm for me how many hours it's asking you to then submit for your project experience.
Okay, so it recognized my Prince 2. That's one.
Okay, for your PM education. Yep, we'll come to that in a second. So if you go to the next area.
I suspect they teach,
yes,
they treat high school as your primary degree, Mike. That could be an option.
Yeah. So basically, what it's done, it's coded it correctly, Mohammed, is essentially, it's for some reason it's been coded as a secondary degree, but it's still classed as the degree required to then make you eligible for the 3 years of effort, as opposed to the 5 years of effort. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. You're on the right path.
Okay. Good.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Mohammed.
No problem.
Any other questions around the general education? Okay. Let's jump into the experience section. So this is your opportunity to tell PMI why what you've been doing as a project manager. Okay, so first thing I'll say here, this is not you talking about the project, this is talking about your role on the project. You need to remember that PMI are quite protective of their certification. They want to make sure that the right people, or they're approving the right people to go on and sit this exam. So this is the screening process, and they're going to judge your experience as a project manager, based on what you're putting into this form here, or these fields. And it's your job to sell yourself as being a competent and experienced project manager. Now, of course, you've got to do that within the context of the projects you delivered. So let's take a look at the fields, and I'll zoom in a bit. Take a look at the fields that they're asking you to fill out here. So you do this once per project. Now, there is a bit of a grey area here, because in the New Zealand context, it's quite common for our projects to be, for some organisations, some industries, a couple of weeks' work, maybe a month's work, maybe sort of 3 months' work. And, if you're looking to get 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience, you could be looking at quite a large handful of projects. It's going to take you quite a bit of time to document your experience across, say, 36 projects. We had one client at the Christchurch City Council who drafted a PMP application with 76 project experience summaries. That took her hours to fill out, and I'm not suggesting anyone should do that. I don't think there's value in doing that. But PMI are wanting to see project-based experience. We have seen students being called out in the past where PMI are saying you've grouped a bunch of projects here as a program. We're not looking for program management experience, we're looking for project management experience. So you've got to be very, very careful on your wording here. Please avoid using any reference to the word program. That's P-R-O-G-R-A-M or P-R-O-G-R-A-M-M-E. Just do not use those words in your application. Why? Because the program management experience, PMI believe, is relevant to their program management certification. They've got a PGMP. Okay, and we had feedback from PMI in the past, one of our students saying, hey, great, that's really good experience, but we can't apply that to PMP because it's more relevant to the PGMP. So if you are in a situation where you've got a whole bunch of similar projects all related to the same area, treat that as a project with multiple work streams. Okay, that's been allowed in the past. So you've got, if they're all for the same area of the organization, maybe the same business unit or the same customer, but the whole sort of rats and mice bits and pieces, then treat them as an overall wider project with different work streams that you've managed throughout, and just do one summary on that.
Mike?
Yes.
What happens if your title is program/project manager?
Yep, good question. So PMI have not given us any firm, well, based on my experience with people's applications, they haven't pushed people back on not having a project manager role title. So let's just talk about, that's the third field there, job title. People can put project manager, program manager, project director, solution designer, technical architect. These are just so many different organizations have different terms for your role, where they formally recognize your role as a project manager or they don't. So look, put your role there. If it's possible, it's always good to somehow align this to a term project manager. But if you can't, don't worry so much about it. But so your question, Sharon, can you put programs as project manager? Sure, put that in there.
No, my title is program/project manager. That was my title. So I just wanted to make sure that they weren't going to,
So there's a job title and then there's a project role as well, right? So yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Not anymore. So where'd you see that, Ross?
Oh, just there on your screen, a bit further down. Job title.
So that's a just give me a second. I took a snapshot of the screen. That could be I just updated this table today, and that might be a Yes, that's not there anymore. And
yeah.
just primary
There's
industry.
project title. Yeah. Job
This
title,
one here
function
is-
reporting area.
Yeah, that's an error on my behalf. I should have deleted those extra fields today. They
Oh,
used to
that's fine.
ask for those.
Oh, so you don't have to put industry in there at all. So
You've
if your
got-
title's like senior mechanical engineer or something that doesn't even relate to project management, you
Like-
still think put that
Yeah,
in?
that's fine. You know, we've had people do that in the past, Ross. Yep. Okay, so right, so project title, but obviously the title of the project, organization name, and again, if your organization has changed names, then put the former name and then put in brackets rebranded as such and such. You know, we've done that in the past, and your job title. They
While you're there, I've got my application open at the moment. You want me to share screen so you can see the original right now?
if you don't mind sharing, Anya, yep, that'll be super. Yeah. Let me stop sharing my screen, and then I can give some commentary to the wizard.
Yeah. So you set up these templates as though we can just copy straight across and bang straight in.
And I'll get to the reason behind that in a second. Yeah.
Oh, right, share screen, right.
Can you see? Can you share screen now, or do I have to make you co-host?
Host disabled, right. Can't do it.
Okay, just a second.
I'll feel extra special.
There you go. You got extra special rights now, Anya.
Right. Looking at that one. Does it work?
Yeah,
It's come out now. Yeah,
we're
great.
on.
Okay, so here is the basically wizard online. Okay, so you got project title there, organization, so Landcare Research New Zealand Limited, and you are the contract manager. Now, function reporting area. Can you give us a drop down? Open up the drop down list, please. So customer service, finance, HR, IT, marketing. I assume there's an other at the bottom there, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And if you click other, does it give you a free text field?
Yeah, I had to do it. And
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just go back and select what it was. So they're basically wanting to work out which area, and of course your primary focus. So you've put in other for research, and I imagine there's a whole bunch of other default options there before selecting other. Okay.
All sorts of crazy stuff.
So you should be able to hopefully link your organization's area of business in this as well. Approach methodology. So the way your project was delivered, traditional, agile, and hybrid. And I'm going to have a bit of a guess that most people would be able to select hybrid. They'll be taking a bit of both worlds. But look, PMI is not going to judge your application on this. There's not a need currently to have X amount of experience in traditional and X amount of experience in agile. But that's probably going to change next year. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. Team size, there's a whole bunch of different groupings here. So 1 to 4, what else have we got?
That's only you and your team A. That's not your stakeholders or any of that other around sponsors and all that. It's literally just the people that work on it, eh?
I'd say you're just your immediate team. And I imagine this is actually feeding into some greater research that PMI is going into actually work out what's the general average size teams across projects, across your world. And yeah, it's just them getting a bit of research, and then project budgets there as well. Can you change the dollar amount, or is it all in US dollars?
No, and this is the lowest, and it's just because of crazy.
There you go. Yeah. So it's quite often that us in little old New Zealand, we're constantly delivering projects less than $1 million. I mean, sure, we've got lots of projects which are well and above that, but there's so many projects we work on which are underneath that category. So you got to think that PMI has tried to generate a form which is going to be least hassle and most applicable to everybody across the globe. So this is what the categories I've come up with. And
Anya, what happens when you put a month and year in for the end date? Does that automatically tally that as months and whack it onto your experience, or?
It does. It calculates the months for you.
I'll try that. I'll just make something up.
So on the right-hand side where it says total of 0 of 36 months, once Tanya's in a position to submit this form, it basically then tallies them up, and you keep entering project experience until that counter on the right-hand side adds up to 36 or more.
Because didn't it used to be so many thousand hours, but now they're just sticking to 36 months.
So the nice thing about this, they used to ask people to break it down by hours per process domain. So you're initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. But now they're just giving you a date range, and they'll work out the months because you require 36 months to be eligible.
Cool. Okay. And they just assume that whole time you're project managing, I guess.
Look, I guess so. it'd be quite interesting to see how the math works around, multiple timelines, and whether or not, I assume they'll just count that month once, even though you worked on 2 projects. They need 36 months in total. You may have done 80 hours a week over a period of months, so therefore, you'd like to be able to count that twice, but because it's in the same month, I'm assuming they'll just count that once.
And as a rule, is it better when you do have overlapping experience, is it better to just draw a line in the sand, pick an arbitrary date and sort of allocate like X months to one project and X months to the other, and just sort of cherry pick the good bits that you need to make the different groups work?
Look, good question. I mean, you've got a call around, which projects to select. You've got just this whole experience, summarizing your role as a project manager must be within the last 8 years. And so my advice will be, choose the biggest projects you worked on in the last 8 years. Don't choose the most recent 5. Choose the biggest projects, because, ideally you want to put, as little effort as possible to get the application sorted. But like if you've got some big hairy projects which sort of consume a lot of time, then I'll be using those first and then working out your smaller projects until you hit over that 36-month mark. I wouldn't fiddle with your project start date and end dates too much. If they overlap, great, they overlap, but just remember that they'll only be counting that month once.
Yeah, righto.
So with some of my projects, for example, so I ran multiple projects. They were similar, like same templates, because they were different people and, there were different constraints. You could count them each as different projects, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But because they're quite similar, I might say it's a project with multiple work streams, so I'm not repeating myself over and over and over.
Yeah.
But these would be like 20 hours a week. And I could say this happened over 2 years, but it's 20 hours a week. Sorry, you're going to hear a child crying. But it's only part-time over 2 years.
Yeah.
But is it still going to count that as 24 months worth, even though I have other projects on the go at that same time that I could count?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know, because they're just asking for these fields here. That's why they used to do it by hours, because they could actually break it down whether you're working 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week. And based on what I'm seeing here, it's going to assume if you worked in July, then you worked the entire month of July on this project, so that's a month's worth of experience.
Mike.
Yeah.
Hi, I submitted mine on Saturday.
Yeah.
And where I had overlapping projects, what they did is they didn't count the hours for that. So even though I worked 20 hours per week on one specific little project, which lasted 3 months, they didn't take the hours for that at all. It just sat there as a 0 hours.
Yeah, but because you already had a project covering that month, didn't you? Those months, is that what you're saying?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, great. Yep. So they're assuming, and Johanna, I guess that answers your question, they're assuming that you worked on this full time, which is, I guess, probably to your advantage.
Yeah,
you could
Sorry?
count it. You could still count, even though they don't count that month, you could still use that separate project for a specific group. Like if you did a lot of initiating in that project, you might still want to whack it in there, even though it overlapped and it's not going to count for additional months. You could probably still use it if you needed to demonstrate particular knowledge in a certain area, right?
Yeah, that's right. I guess if you've got a larger project which spans 12 months, I'll be putting that in first. And then if you got, say, you worked on a 3-month project in the middle, then I wouldn't bother submitting that because you're not going to get any credit for that. But if you worked on something that sort of, say, if it's a 12-month calendar year, you had a project going from, say, December through to March, I'd be putting December to March in there. Sure, you won't get December hours, but you get January, February, and March in there as well. So you get an extra 3 months from the additional 4-month project.
Right. What happens if you're a joint project manager?
Good question. My advice is to avoid saying that if possible. So again, PMI, they've got a person in America who's reading your application, and they need to have full confidence that you've got project experience. So I'd be erring on the side of caution and don't saying that, I worked with another project manager to help deliver this. Just focus on the work you did. So if you worked on establishing a budget, coming up with a schedule, managing risks, monitoring change, all that sort of good stuff, then it doesn't matter that you did it with someone else. Just tell them what you did. So that, I guess, does lead me to this big box here, this project description. So you have 200 to 500 words. So this is another change they've made, where it used to be 500 characters, which is basically a paragraph. So now you got the option to extend it to a couple of paragraphs, which is a good thing. Now,
Mike, can I ask you a question?
Who is that? Who's that?
It's Aya.
Hiya.
I'm working on a project, but I have worked from 2 different companies for this one project. So one is I was in Tokyo, to set up a new joint venture in New Zealand. And I mostly did the initiating and the planning and a bit of execution. And then I moved to New Zealand and now work for the joint venture we set up. So should we treat this as one project?
Are they related projects or are they completely separate projects?
It's a completely the same project.
Same project. Oh yeah, just treat it as one project. So if you, I mean, it doesn't matter because you change countries and you maybe change roles slightly or focus slightly. Just, I mean, you just treat it as one project.
And then, so should I put the two organization name?
I'd maybe put in the project description that it was a combination of two companies coming together or an overlap or whatever it might be. So put that in the experience. Just put the main organization name that you spent most of the time in the top of the section.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Are we trying? I'm sorry, Mike. Are we trying to avoid language that would move away from the project management role? I mean, I've worked on large projects. It's not the size of the project. It's more the fact that I had a very specialized role as usually a planner scheduler within a project. So I was never a project manager per se.
So your role here is to play project management buzzword bingo. So here is the format of what this section should be in. And this is, again, why we have it in our template, because we've got some example summaries in this. But essentially in this field here, the first sentence should be what the project is. So state the project objective, what we are there to build. That's what all projects are. They're building something, they're delivering something new, they're something of value. State what that is. The last sentence of this description should be the outcome of the project, i.e. the project was delivered successfully and adopted by the customer, or the project was halted halfway through because of a change in organization priorities, or the project was ended terribly wrong. I mean, I'd try and avoid telling stories of failed projects, but if it did end unsuccessfully, then you need to state that. They have asked in the past people to state the outcome of the project. But the guts of this project experience summary is all about your role. So again, it's not about the project. You've summarized it in one sentence. That's what we're looking for. It's your role. So again, you've got people in Philadelphia? No. Anyway, PMI in the States, I think it's Philadelphia, who don't know you, and they have to make a decision on whether or not you have the experience to get PMP based on what they're reading here. So you are, and do it by your knowledge of the domains. So start off in order sequence in terms of, this is the stuff I did in initiation. So under initiation, I read and reviewed the business documents. I drafted the project charter with a sponsor, identified key stakeholders, and came up with a high-level view of the project. That's basically the guts of initiation. In planning, I come up with a detailed project management plan. I come up with planning around requirements collection or collected requirements from the key stakeholders, define the scope of the project, to come up with the work breakdown structure. I planned our approach to both schedule and cost management. I came up with the key activities and worked out with the key resources estimates for those activities. I came up with a schedule. I came up with a project budget. I managed the budget and schedule over time. I identified risks, held risk workshop meetings. I wrote monthly status reports. I engaged senior stakeholders throughout the course of the project. I managed communications. I reported on or worked with the project team to lead the quality initiatives across the project. I managed procurement, so we engaged an external vendor or a contracting agency to engage a certain deliverable of the project. So I oversaw the engagement of their contractor, the performance management of their contractor. You should read table 1.1 or 1.4, the big glossary of the PMBOK guide, which we have in our course materials, and try and reference not everything, because that sounds a little bit corny, but just from the things you did on your project, use the PMI terms. You may call them differently here in New Zealand, or you might call it a program, and instead of a schedule, use the term schedule, because that's the language PMI use. Again, do not use the word program. I see a lot. The most common feedback I get from people's applications is they use the word program for a timeline. That is a schedule. PMI call it a schedule.
Right. On Vector's not doubling up on that, I volunteered quite a bit for a company doing project work, and they're happy to sign that off, but they want to see the exact hours to sign that off, which means we're coming back to the overlapping issue. And I cannot say I've done July to March next year, 24/7. I've done that project because I only volunteer for them twice a week or something. And I know PMI looks really well upon volunteering, but
yes, they do. Yep.
How there's no field for that this is a volunteer job, and that you do that after hours, and that you do your normal job, and that yes, your projects will over that. Otherwise, I'll have to say I've done it all on the weekend.
That's a good question. I mean, like, you're right, PMI do look favourably on volunteers, and they're very much happy to have volunteer experience in this. But if you worked on it, say, 2 hours a week over the course of 3 years, does that give you your experience all in one volunteer initiative? I mean, arguably, because of what I see here, then it would do. This is a bit risky, but you could put under project description that this is a part-time role where I work say 4 hours a week. If they read that, they might say, oh, okay, you've got 3 years of experience here in this volunteer project, but it's only part-time. So they might come back to you and say, hey, look, we need some more project experience, please, to verify you've got 3 years of actual experience over the course of that. So my advice would be, if you've got actual full-time work, 20 hours a week more on projects, then I'll be using that over the volunteer capacity.
Yeah, well, that doesn't give me enough hours.
Yeah, okay, so then you've got no choice but to do that. So add it in there, and yeah, you might want to maybe change the dates of it so you don't have, I mean, how long's your volunteering initiative? How long is that project?
I did several ones with them. I've volunteered for them for 10 years, so I can only go back to 2012.
Yes, it's 8 years. Yeah, there's this.
Yeah, so if I don't have enough now, I think I don't have quite enough hours in the last 6 years. I'll have to pull some of those in.
And go back to your point before, you mentioned that they're only happy to provide a sign-off for this if you show them the hours you worked over that period. Is that what your volunteer organisation?
Because of the projects, they want me to. I've put an Excel in and said, "Look, this is what I've done for you. Are you happy with that?" And they go, "Yep, we're signing that off." And I said, "Well, it's going to look different for PMI." And they said, "No, we want to make sure that we sign off the dates that you've done this for us, so we're."
Yeah, I mean, all you need them to be happy with, in the rare chance you do get audited, and I'll explain that process in a second, but all you need them to be happy with is say, right, Anya, you worked on from June to October in this particular year. If they're happy with that, then they don't need to, you're not going to tell PMI that, or imply to PMI that you're working 40 hours a week on this. So, they're not. Yeah, they shouldn't be worried about how many hours per week you're doing. All they're asking, PMI is going to ask them to sign off, is that you had a start date and end date, and here are the dates. Are they happy with those dates? Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
What happens if partway through your organisation your line manager changed? Like, I've had that a number of times.
Oh yeah, sure. That's a real thing. Just put whatever line manager who you've got access to. So that does lead me into the next point. I'll come back to the project descriptions in a second to make sure I really hone on that. But coming to the whole audit process, because obviously there's some questions on that, is essentially what they do is they PDF your application. So what you see on screen here, they lock it down into a PDF. They give you one PDF per project summary. So you've got 5 projects you submit, 5 PDFs, 10. Okay, and every I guess sponsor that you put, actually go back up, where's the...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You don't put any contact details. What happens if you click through this, if you just whack a generic?
Yeah, I was looking for that as well. It's just description.
That's actually, yeah, good point. Can you just put in the text there field, say, notes to follow, and then hit save experience? And then just, you need to put at least 100 words. Let's make up a story. Yeah.
Or copy a section out of the template straight in there.
Do you have that template on hand? I can actually give you a section here.
No, I don't. Yeah, if you have one.
Or even just copy a stuff article. And copyright.
Here's, what's going on here? Here's some words for you to use. Just copy and paste that. Hopefully that's 100 words. I actually haven't counted it. Copy and paste that into the form for us, Anya.
I'm actually quite glad it's now between 200 and 500 words, not 500 characters, because that was really hard to write when it was 500 characters.
Oh, this is ridiculous. This thing.
It's like a tweet. This project tweet.
It must be 100 words.
No, it is more actually.
Paste it again.
Before.
Yeah, copy and paste it again.
Yeah, paste it twice.
That's what I did. That's what I did as well.
Yeah, here we go. Right.
Yeah, right. So save experience. Let's just see if it's asking for people.
Mark, in mine, I PDF mine, and it hasn't asked for any of my contacts.
Check me out.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Oh,
It's
all right.
it's already done it.
okay, so that's so you don't recall.
Can you see my screen?
I'll stop sharing.
Not yet, Mo.
Yeah, it's in your camera, and we can see your face again, Mohammed.
Smiling, yes. Okay. Yep, nothing happened.
So nothing happened. Okay, so that tells me that you don't need to put people's names anymore, which is quite interesting. But let me come back to what I was saying around the audit process. What they'll do is they'll PDF your application, and they'll give that back to you. And basically, because you're not putting a person's name, you have to get someone from that organisation, which is going to be quite interesting if they no longer work there. Anyway, the way the audit process works is for every experience you submit, you have to get a signature from the person who can vouch for your experience. So it's usually a manager or a sponsor or a client, someone who ideally you still have contact with. So, this might mean if you've moved on 2 organizations and I've moved on 2 organizations, you might have tracked them down through social media, LinkedIn or Facebook. And, when I applied for my PMP exam, I tracked down my past manager and said, hey, look, I'm applying for the PMP exam. If I do get audited, would you be available to review my experience and sign off on that should we need to? A 10% chance, roughly. It is random, so you hopefully don't need to bother you with this, but are you okay with this? And that gives you confidence that if you do get audited, you've already got an open communication there to follow that through. Now, we haven't had anyone audited since COVID lockdown. So I don't know whether or not they're still doing auditing or whether they're saying that's just too much hard work at the moment, we're going to put auditing aside. They haven't told us this for obvious reasons. But if they do, then you guys need to be ready to go down that path where you actually have to send them this PDF. You can send them through electronically, especially if they live in a different country, you have to. They have to print that out, sign where it says to sign to say, yes, I vouch for Anya's experience in this volunteering capacity. They have to put that in an envelope, close the back of the envelope and sign across the back seal. Okay, so sign the document itself and then sign across the back seal. They then post that envelope to you. If you've got 5 different projects with 5 different people across 5 different countries, you've got to wait for all those envelopes to come back to you. You put all those envelopes with a copy of your education certificate, a copy from your certificate from Milpom for your PM education, and send that to PMI in the States. They then review that and say, great.
Does it have to be a hard copy? It's
got to be hard. So at the moment, it's all signed, physically signed, it's all hard copy. The reason why is because PMI know a lot of people want their PMP and they want to make sure the right people have the PMP for the right reasons. So they're trying to avoid all chances of plagiarism or cheating or forgery. So they're doing that physically. But I stress, it's great to see PMI have gone online with the PMP exam. They were very, very cautious about going online with PMP exam. It didn't happen for many, many years. COVID has forced that to happen, which is a great thing. I don't know how this has impacted the audit process because we haven't had anyone audited since COVID. So it may have changed. They may be accepting digital electronic signatures through a PDF self-signature facility.
What I'm hearing is get it in now because they're not doing any auditing.
I don't know that for sure. Hopefully not. Yeah, but definitely get it in, right? Get this application sorted.
How long would they give you to send everything in? Because obviously, if you're going to different countries, and
it's 90 days.
They give you 90 days.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So coming back to let me share my screen again. Let me come back to some example project experiences.
We actually don't have 90 days until the 2nd of January.
And also
there's 79 days at Christmas till Christmas. So someone told me on Facebook today.
Yeah. Okay. So no, please do get this and make this a priority because this is going to be the hurdle between you and being able to book your exam, and that's the important thing right there. Okay,
Mike, there's one other question, sorry. Grant, who was on our course last night, he said that he put his application form in and had the course information that he's doing now as his only professional development stuff, and his application got accepted, but I thought the rules were that we had to do our application after our course finished on the dates that we put in.
Yeah, depending on again, we'll come back to the education screen and education section in a second, but it looks like they're doing it by month now. So even if the course, if you're on the start of 1st of October, then you can put in October, it will give you the hours across October. So that's, I think, a bit of a loophole there. So yeah, come back to education in a second. So here's the format I suggest you use. So I was a project manager. You know, if you were a technical architect or whatever, but you were the project manager, then state that in here. State that even though you weren't called, your title wasn't project manager, that's the role you're performing. So put that in there for XXX project, and talk about, you know, the objectives of the project. Now, here's me. This is a suggestion from PMI based on information they sent to past students. They prefer to give you, break it into sections: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closure. They're happy with these abbreviations. Okay, they used to like abbreviations because you only had 550 characters. You're not words now, so you got a bit more room to wiggle. But talk about the key efforts, focus, the documents, the conversations, the people, the role you did in that project leadership position. Ended up with the project was successfully completed. Over the page, there's a whole bunch of examples to read and use as reference. Okay, so please do this. Now, the reason why this is all in a Word document is because we can give you some examples, but also, you know, if you got, say, 5 projects, write 1 up first, maybe write 2 up and send it through to us, and we'll have a bit of a quick read over it to make sure you got the right grasp of what you're doing here. Because again, we want to help you where we can to make sure that whatever light you're presenting yourself into PMI, it's the right light. It's going to be seamless process for PMI. It's like, yes, here's another project manager stamp, move on. We don't want you to raise any sort of, you to be in a position to accidentally raise some alarm bells. Because we had in the past with, like I said, people giving program management references and talking more about the project itself rather than their role on the project. So this is just an opportunity to put a bit of a filter between you and PMI, which is why we give you that Word form. If you prefer to do it directly onto the wizard, you can do that, but you don't get the examples in the document here. You can PDF it, but then if us reviewing the PDF, we can't make quick write-ups within the PDF. So we've got to sort of reply to your email and sort of copy and paste things. It's just a bit more problematic for us. Whereas if you give us in the Word document, we can turn track changes on and I can edit away and give you a quite quick review on what you've put so far. So there's plenty of examples in there to have a bit of a read. And you know, like I said, it's buzzword bingo, work phases, identify stakeholders, refine scope and budget, produce a project management plan, supervise testing. One of the key words they do like is the term led and directed project team. So write that down. I led and directed the project team. If you're in the position where you led people and you told them what to do, or you asked nicely, you led and directed the project team. So please use that. That's a few ticks if we ever saw some.
Even if you didn't, what if your work indirectly influenced the project team?
Then I'd be talking about I work with the project team to establish a work breakdown structure. Okay, yeah. I mean that's to me that sounds like a perfect thing the PM would do. Okay, so I mean, this is the most important part of the application is just the wording you use and making sure you're staying within the lines to make sure you're representing yourself in the best light. So coming to the final section is your project management education hours, and you'll get 35 hours regardless of whatever course you did through Millpond. We'll give you a certificate for 35 hours. I mean, you're in a session tonight. We're going for almost an hour. That's another hour of education. Now, my advice here is you can use Millpond if you like, but Millpond and our training company, Falcon Training, merged across May this year. So Falcon Training is a registered education provider with PMI. So we're in the system. The registered education provider is a global network that PMI, we've basically signed up to with PMI. They've been through us, our trainers, our materials, everything we do as a business in terms of training, and said, yes, we give you the thumbs up. You guys are doing what you should be doing in the training space. Now that registered education provider program is coming to an end at the end of this year. It should have already closed off, but COVID then extended it out to the end of this calendar year. Next year, they're replacing it with a new program called an authorized training partner. You don't need to worry about any of that, but there is a change behind the scenes in terms of the way PMI partner with organizations like Millpond, and because they're going through this change, they've grandfathered the current status we're in. And because we went through a branding change, it's still the same content, we just put a blue Millpond instead of a dark blue Falcon on our slides. We cannot change the company name we have set up with PMI today. So my advice would be, put the institution here, Falcon Training. Okay, so I mean, if you've already applied, don't worry about it. It's not an issue. But my preference would be to use Falcon Training in here because PMI know about Falcon Training. Like I said, we're registered with them, and that will make oh yeah, it's Falcon Training, great. They know what they're doing. It's a clean slide through for the education. We can give you, if you do get audited, then based on whoever you put here, either Falcon or Millpond, we'll give you a certificate, either Falcon branded or Millpond. Falcon's still a registered company in New Zealand. It's just not publicly branded anymore. It's all going through Millpond. Put my details here. You can use my Millpond address, or that's absolutely fine. And just put I mean, again, they're talking about months there. So the start month, end month, the project, and say 35 hours, and we'll give you a certificate for 35 hours of education. So that really shouldn't be a problem. If you haven't gone on a Prince 2 course or any other course around managing people, managing risks, you've gone on a project online course or some sort of internal course around managing or engaging with your internal project management information system, you've gone on a time management course, health and safety courses, all this is relevant to project management, so you can use it all. There is no time frame on your project management education. It can go back right up to high school if you recall. A bit hard to prove if you do get audited, but if you recall going on some sort of courses at a tertiary institution, you did an engineering qualification and you did a couple of hours on project management, then you can use that, okay? And you just need to provide a copy of your engineering qualification certificate as a result of that.
What about IID courses?
IID courses, is that what you said, Anne-Marie?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, what was the course or what was the topic?
Company directors or financial management or...
Financial management, yep, bingo. Company directors, not so much. I mean, being a director of a company is quite different to being a project manager for a project. I'm sure there's a bit of stuff that you can sort of marry across. So if you went on, say, a 3-day course, you might be able to claim, say, a couple of hours on project management related topics. Finance course, I'd say that's 100% applicable. Oh, you're on mute there again, Anne-Marie.
How many hours do we have to clock out?
35 hours.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yep.
we've got them. We've all got them.
So if you've put your dates in there for the Millpond course or the Falcon course, and you should have 35 hours. But if you want to...
Sorry, will you be able to forward issue that? Like, we've still got a few sessions to go, but will you be able
So when they used to ask for by day, you couldn't put a day in the future. We're at the 6th of October now, so if you put October in there, then it's going to assume you did your 35 hours across October, even though we're 6 days in October.
Yeah.
So if you put start date October, end date October, then at 35 hours, then they're going to assume you did 35 hours in 6 days, which is obviously technically possible. So
it's all good.
You put it in there. If anyone comes up with sort of an issue around, hey, look, I'll put in this data in here, and based on what it's accepting, I'm missing a few hours, then give me a call and we can work through the details here. Look, my cell phone number's on screen now, so take a note of that, and or just email me, and I'll sort it out for you.
But Mike, can I just confirm that the online course of Millpond we are just taking now is the total hours 30 hours, but
35.
You are saying that the 35 hours will be on the certificate.
Yes, we will give you a certificate for 35 hours. Yeah. There's plenty of conversations we've had in between sessions, plenty of work you guys have done around generating your own presentations and practice questions. You've worked well more than 35 hours on this course, so don't worry about that.
So Mike, again, the education here, what duration we should put? All in October?
So Mohammed, so you started this course, what, back in...
We did it in August.
So put August, put through to October, put 35 hours, hit submit.
Okay, that's what I did already. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
So Mike, on our project descriptions, we should try and tick box every section. I understand.
Look, I don't mean to cut you off there, but yes. So if you can, you don't have to put initiation, planning, monitoring, controlling, or executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing across all projects. Sorry, across every single project, but across your entire, I'm going to use the word portfolio of projects, you should have some experience in all different areas. So you might have done one project we just did initiating and planning, another project we just did execution and closing, but across the group you've got coverage here. I reviewed one person's application today and they didn't have any reference to initiation. I'm sure at any point across any project you've identified some stakeholders, so therefore you've done initiation. So put down initiation where you engage and identify key stakeholders in your project.
And for closeout, you know, there's lessons learnt log and things, lessons learnt report and stuff like that. Because sometimes I've been moved on from projects because I've done a great job, but they haven't been bothered about, you know, they haven't allowed me to have the time to close off.
Yep.
You know, don't tell PMP that, but you know, the business needed me to move on to the next big project and didn't, you know, I handed over to BAU but didn't get the chance to close out completely
So
on
remember
everything.
that closeout column is closed project or phase. Okay, so at any point where you came to the end of a deliverable and you hand that deliverable, whether it's a piece of documentation or whether it's some widget or an application or a floor of a building, you have gone through that handover process where you've gone through and reviewed what you've done and got acceptance from the client that that is going to work. Sure, ideally, you've gone through lessons learned and tracked things and archived your project documentation, closed all your contracts, and all that sort of good stuff we talk about. If you've done some of those, fantastic. If you had an end of project party, put that in there because PMI is all about celebration. So I've never met a person yet who's worked on a project where you haven't been able to tick one of those categories at any point during their history of project management. So I'll be surprised if one of you guys are the first.
Mike, another question. Trev and I, we work for consultants, so we do a lot of work managing our internal project team, but on the same project, we're also doing a lot of project management activities for the client, like risk ID, stakeholder, but we're also managing our own internal budget to make sure that we don't have any overruns there and our own internal schedule for deliverables and things like that. So it's both an internal and external PM role concurrently. Is there anything we should really try and highlight there, or should we just kind of write it as though, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no dramas there. Just put in that you manage both internal and external stakeholders, and you have both internal project teams and external project commitments that you need to look after. And so you're doing the whole project management responsibility across a couple of different areas. It doesn't matter. You know, PMI is very much the view is we want to get away from this whole buyer supplier mentality, them versus us. We are one team working together. It doesn't matter which team who actually pays your salary, we're working on this project together, and if we work together, we get the best outcomes possible. So, look, explain a bit about that, but it shouldn't sort of hold you back or shouldn't worry you about how PMI is going to perceive that.
What if your experience is not project, but again, I mean, I work for the same consultancy, but I'm more like a PMI role where I will touch multiple projects for very short periods of time for one particular knowledge area. It might be initiating, it might be monitoring. Again, should I list every single one of those as separate projects, or maybe, you know?
Look, it depends how many you're talking, Alex. And if it's just a handful, then sure, listen separately. But if you're talking, say, 15 plus, then I'd try and look for sort of themes where you're providing almost like a project type service to a collection of projects, or maybe a project type service to a particular client of yours. So if you can...
It is, the client is internal. The client is a specific business unit within the organization, for example.
So maybe group them up into those sort of initiatives, because every client will have unique needs. It'll all be, you know, time box in terms of when you're going to start providing that service and when you're going to end providing that service. I guess what I suggest is whatever you put in here, ideally, if it's not quite as clear cut as a traditional project would be, just run it past your manager or someone who will potentially sign off and say, look, here is what I'm submitting to PMI. Are you happy with, if I do need to get this signed off, would you be happy signing this off? And they would say, that's great, sure, I understand the limitations here, so no worries at all. We don't want to get a situation where you've written something which doesn't quite click with the person who you're asking to sign, because then that looks bad for you where your person doesn't want to sign it off because it's not quite in line with their thinking.
Probably good to check with our colleagues who have already just been certified as well. So that will help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, please do reach out to you know, obviously your colleagues, and they might be more than happy to share the application as well in terms of what others do.
Mike, what about when you've got something that started off as like just an interest, like an environmental interest, it then became part of your work, and it's now before the court, and sort of it spans 7 years. And
we have had a couple of people, probably about maybe 4 or 5 people in the past, probably 4 years, who have submitted their entire 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience in one project experience right up. So if is that where you're going with this? Is sort of this big
Yeah.
piece of work which absorbed all your time? Yep. Look, that's fine. I mean, look, PMI are quite commonly reviewing, multi-million, billion-dollar projects because they completely consume someone. I mean, not necessarily implying that your project has to have a lot of money spent on it, but we have not had any issues at all with people submitting just one project experience. What I would encourage you to do is max out as many words as possible. Give them a full project experience summary to read. Don't just give them something lightweight in one project, so they'll be like, oh, this is really a 3-year project. You're giving me one paragraph on this. Give them as much as you can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, but so I was going to give that plus others.
Sure. I mean, I'd say it's a good thing to give them 3.
Right.
Give them a bit of a handful to give you, if you especially worked on different sorts of projects and your roles differed a bit, look, give them a bit of dimension to your career. Yep.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Is everybody happy? Have we got all the questions answered?
No, sorry, Sharon. Just a question. What happens if you are like doing a rollout and you're doing on-floor training and stuff like that, or pre-training, and then you're doing on-floor training when you've rolled out? Does that count?
Develop team.
Yeah, we'll
executing.
Bingo, Ross. Thank you very much. Develop team is a big part of our resource management knowledge area. Trying to get that high performing state, and look, if it's part of your training is around that team or maybe the key project stakeholders, then look, I'd claim that. If you did say 10% project management and your actual role was around actual training people that consumed hours and hours and hours of effort, then I'd be a bit cautious about that. But if you did a bit of, change management is related to project management, training, user engagement, all that sort of stuff is part of the role. So I wouldn't worry too much about that unless that was basically the project. So therefore it's not really project management.
Oh, and then I might have to give you a call to talk to you about the project, the project that I've just finished off on, because that has got some real out of alignment, hence why it's finishing off.
Right, yeah.
But I need to just be careful about how I write it up, I think.
Sure, just as long as you've got a contact within the organisation who'd be willing to approve it, then I'd say, yeah, great, let's look into it and put it in there. If you're feeling that the organisation, you don't have the ability to reach out, if you do audited, then I'd try and look for other project experience that you can put in that place.
No, they will be fine about it. It's just the business case at the start was really out of line with the scope and the benefits, and so we've had to do some matching up. So I'll give you a call and talk to you about it, I think.
No worries. Okay.
Hey Mike, just one more. For validation on if you do get audited, if your role is project manager in your job description, would a sign off from senior HR who can verify that you were there for the necessary number of hours, or are they really looking for someone to verify that you did all the stuff you did?
They would prefer someone to verify that what you've written in your project experience and the time, the start date and end date is true. Now, PMI do not call your person who signs it off. They don't have any interaction with these people at all. It goes through you. So as long as you can have a conversation with the HR manager, say, look, I'm applying for the PMP exam. This is what I need to put. If I do need to get signed off, would you be happy to sign this off? And they say, yeah, sure, we'll go for it. Then PMI are going to assume that whoever signs it off is acting ethically, and we can assume we can trust them. Does everybody feel they've got the information required to kick into the application?
Yeah, just one question. If we do, when we do have our thing ready to review, can we come to you, even though Andy's our facilitator, Mike? Or
yeah, you can. Look, the best thing to do is send it to training team at millpond.co.nz, and so Bronwyn picks up all those emails, and then she basically distributes them across myself, Andrew, and Christy, and whoever answers the email quickest wins, and you'll get one of us to talk to. So look, if everyone emails me in the next week or so, look, I've got a pretty hectic week this week and next week.
Yeah,
I'm actually on school camp with my daughter Wednesday to Friday next week, so I'm not available then. So
That's
I suggest you, if you do
itself.
want to, so look, the best thing, training team at millpond.co.nz, which is the email I imagine that the invite from today was sent out to. Send it through to that, and Bronwyn will manage the incoming, I guess, requests and divide and conquer that way. That's probably the fastest way to get a turnaround for you.
Cool, thanks.
And Mike, I've just got 2 questions. Can I fully confirm it's 3 years experience total, isn't it? If
you've got a degree. Yep, 3 years.
And then the other thing is so if you're saying 8 years back, is that 8 years back to the month? So if we're in October 2020, it's
October 2012.
October?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding based on how it used to work. I don't know whether or not they've started 2020 to any time in 2012, but I'm pretty sure it'll be October.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Super. All right. I do want to stress, please jump into this, get it in, either do the application, the template on our website, or go through and do it directly on the PMI website. The sooner you get your application in, the sooner you can actually book and pay for your exam, which then means you can actually lock in an exam date, which I said earlier is a very important step. Payment will be by credit card. It's quite a lengthy process to get invoiced by PMI. So if you're working for government, it's probably easier to pay for it yourself than do an expense claim, if hopefully it's the process available for you. What else do I want to say about that? Oh, it normally takes PMI, they say 8 days. Most of the time they turn around in 4 to 5 days, your application. So you apply, you should get an email 4 to 5 days later, maybe 8, with PMI saying, yep, you're all good to go to the next stage. Please keep checking the PMI.org website. You log in, go to my dashboard on the right hand side, it'll come up with your certification application process. Keep checking that on a daily basis, because sometimes people say they don't get emails from PMI saying they reviewed and approved it. It sometimes might go to some sort of spam or a email blocking type system if your organization's got one of those. So, which it probably should do. So please just do check that manually. Don't just wait for an email and 3 weeks later you realize that they approved it 2 weeks ago. All right, team, I'll let you get on with the rest of your Tuesday night. Thanks for dialing in. Hopefully that's a little bit clearer for everybody. All the best with your studies, and I'm sure we'll touch base with many of you in due course.
Mike.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, are you able to email me when might suit that I can just give you a 10-minute conversation?
I'm happy to stick around now if that suits you.
That would be that would be good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.